Okay, so before we start our video today, we've got a special guest with us.
Hey!
Let's watch a CNN panel as they discuss Trump leaning more into imperialism, as most anti-war candidates do, of course, while it becomes clearer and clearer that every single reason MAGA elected him for is a complete ruse and they don't even care. So he's just going to legislate as a run-of-the-mill, donor-driven, benefit corporations, war hawk Republican.
America is not an expansionist military power, not in the 21st century. Okay?
Why?
Because that's
Why not?
Because that's not the world that we live in.
Wait, hold on, Scott.
I know.
You answered that question.
Yes.
Why is the United States not?
So you're for attacking
Why
Greenland,
is the
Scott? Is that
United
what you're
States
saying?
not an expansionist military power?
You're open to the idea of attacking Greenland?
We created.
No, we don't need to attack Greenland. We could buy it.
We can't buy it. It's not up for sale.
We
So
helped
what you're saying
create
is
a
not true.
world order.
Nothing.
in which-
Everything's not for sale until
Hang
it
on,
is.
Scott. We helped create a world order in which we said you cannot just decide you want that country and then take your military and go into that country and take it. Okay, so that is the era of not being in an expansionist military era for the United States. And you're saying that's not true. Why is it not true?
Well, I mean, you could think small if you want to. I think Trump's thinking big, and he's thinking about U.S. interests. There are U.S. interests in Greenland. They have rare earth minerals. We already have some kind of space facility there, and it would help fortify us against the Russians. The Panama Canal is, of course, of interest when you consider the Chinese incursions and influence in this hemisphere.
These people think on such binary levels. It's really frustrating. It's because of the precedent it would set why we shouldn't do it. If we invade Greenland and Canada and take back the Panama Canal, and Russia sees this and then takes Ukraine and then goes and takes Poland, they've now invaded a NATO country and we're at war, our boots are on the ground. Or the alternative is we see them invade Poland, we disband NATO, which only further signals to Russia that we're going to allow them to keep expanding and do their own imperialism. And then before we know it, they have an alliance that rivals ours in military size and strength. And guess what? We're at war anyway, and it might be in America on our home ground. We're fighting this war. As the man said, these places are not for sale. It's not like we're going to offer them money and acquire them. We would absolutely be invading these countries, taking control of their resources, and then forcing them into a deal, which is quite literally what imperialism is, by the way, which MAGA pretended and said they had a problem with when it was NATO defending Ukraine. But now that it's Trump wanting to maniacally take over sovereign countries, imperialism is sick, right? I mean, the downfall for Trump is doing this it's the reason he won't do this is the same why they would never make Puerto Rico a state. Canada and Greenland both have free healthcare. Greenland has free college. Both have robust social programs. They are permanent deep blue states if they ever joined America. So what Trump is doing here is just rage bait. He's never going to do this, but his base is actually falling in line to support it, which is hilarious as Trump is without even trying to, exposing his base as not having any real beliefs.
Russia for many, many years, long before Putin said you could never have NATO involved with Ukraine. Now they've said that that's been written in stone. And somewhere along the line, Biden said, no, they should be able to join NATO. Well, then Russia has somebody right on their doorstep, and I could understand their feeling about that. But there were a lot of mistakes made in that negotiation. Well, my view is that it was always understood. In fact, I believe that they had a deal, and then Biden broke it.
This is deeply wrong on several levels. First of all, the promise to give Ukraine a path to NATO was made by George W. Bush in 2008 and the rest of NATO. It's in Ukraine's constitution, okay? And if Donald Trump wants to change that, that's one thing. But what we can't allow is the idea that Putin gets to decide what Ukraine gets to do, because the entire war in Ukraine is based on the idea that Ukraine gets to decide what Ukraine wants to do. It's a country. They have people there. They're allowed to decide what alliances they want to be in, and they don't have to ask Putin for permission. And Donald Trump can't give them permission, and Putin can't give them permission.
Yeah, I mean, these are literal just Kremlin talking points coming out of the mouth of our president. It's wild to see the full Russian infiltration of the Republican Party, which, by the way, now controls the House, Senate, and presidency in this country. And to be clear, this idea that it's okay or understandable that Russia is mad because we gave them assurances we wouldn't expand east is just a completely made up Russian talking point as well. And the first thing MAGA always goes to defend, the Ruskies and what Trump is alluding here and saying that he understands, right? The we won't expand east was a verbal promise, just something said in passing by our Secretary of State, not someone who at all has the power to make make a deal or make this binding. He said it to Gorbachev in 1990 while the USSR was still fully formed and there was no signs of it dissolving. So like the makeup of Europe was a lot different when he said this. And again, never a formal agreement, never even said by someone who had the power to make it a formal agreement. It was just something that was said in passing. The USSR went on to dissolve a year later. And that essentially rearranged the composition in Europe. And then we go and sign a formal agreement years later in 1995, 1994, like the Budapest Memorandum, and then there was one after that, with no promise included whatsoever of expanding east. Furthermore, it was Bush who first proposed the idea of allowing Ukraine into NATO, which had them add that to their constitution. This isn't something that's new and unexpected that Biden and the Democrats are doing. No, and NATO, by the way, has an open door policy. This idea that NATO is like the enemy of Russia is, again, Russian talking point. NATO is essentially a coalition to stop and push back against imperialism. However, any country who meets the requirements are free to join if they want, which means Russia could if they want it. So the only reason they see NATO as an enemy is fully by choice anyway. NATO's never aggressed on them in any way. NATO's never invaded them. They have no reason to see NATO as an enemy alliance.
You know who thought big? It was FDR. It was Woodrow Wilson. It was in America that said, we are the country that believes in self-determination of people around the world. And you know who benefited from that? My grandfather, who was in jail for 4 years alongside Gandhi, fighting for independence. I want an America that is strong because of the principles we stand for, unlike the British Empire, unlike other colonial empires, a nation that believes in the self-determination of people. We're going to celebrate Jimmy Carter's life. He is the person who stood with the Torrijos-Carter Agreement in recognizing Panama's self-determination, because that was important for America and Latin America.
I also think it's
You're going
important
to get
that
this America, and you and I are going to work together in order to make sure we get this America back on track. It's an exciting I think it's an exciting time for all of us. Just like you said, so many of us have had generations upon generations of families that have come in here and made the impossible possible. We got to get back to rooting for America. You know, when you watch the Olympics and you're watching curling and you have no idea where that person's from or what background they're, all they have is an American flag on their shoulder, and you're rooting for them to win the gold medal. We got to get back to that.
Okay, so to be clear, I don't know this Republican enough to know if he has like terrible opinions or whatever, but I will say that what he says here, this kind of mantra from conservatives, is the kind of conservative stuff that I can get behind, because he's totally right in that moment, that is what unity really looks like for America. But the only reason that is not then extrapolated to the entirety of American society is because of Republicans. And I don't think they'll ever admit that, not because of Democrats, which they just want to blame Democrats, which again just kind of shows why. But like, I mean, maybe if we're going way back, because this has been studied, you could say like it might have somewhat started with lefties during the Bush administration, where there was a pretty clear divide in the country created between pro-war and anti-war. But then it accelerated under Obama with like blatant racist talking points and discourse just becoming normalized from the right, questioning his birth of origin, questioning his ethnicity, questioning his wife's sex for no other reason than he's a black man. And then Trump sees this, right? And he took the chance to make this the identity of the party, and we've only seen the divide grow since then. While Republicans will, of course, turn around and say, oh no, it's not Trump's fault. He's not creating a divide by being racist or misogynistic or bigoted in any form, or calling Democrats the enemy of the people and corrupt and villains and criminals, and saying every institution is against him and there's a conspiracy and we can't trust the government or any officials or anything like that. No, it's the Democrats for calling him a racist or a misogynist or bigot, or pointing out like the fascistic tendencies in his rhetoric. And Ro Khanna is also spot on here. Self-determination is a core principle of America. Like, these people claim to be patriots but don't care about American principles, which is weird, right? This is why we fled the British. So now, as a superpower, holding this same principle up on a global scale has always been and should continue to be a mission of ours. And it's despicable to see Trump and the Kremlin party trying to undo that.
Like and subscribe. And I forgot what I wanted to say when I wanted to say something at the start, and now I forgot.